Hello, everyone. I'm excited to be with you for a live with CCO. I'm looking at the comments and we did have a title change, but don't worry. We'll be back with more information about testing and time management for testing. So again, we got the wrong title out there. Apologize for that, but I know some of you have joined us specifically for the time management of the CPC. And we have a lot of great tips that we can share with you. What we did, however, was set up a presentation on time management for the coder after you're out there and working. So, again, we'll give you both. Uh, the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about when we're dealing with time management and working with coding, not it doesn't matter what role you're in as a coder, time management is always going to be an important part of your life. Knowing what an active day looks like is going to be the first step. And the best way to do that is to talk to people that are already in the industry. A great way to do that is meet up with your local chapters and find maybe a mentor. A lot of times, a person can be your mentor and not even know they're your mentor. There's someone that you communicate with. Ask advice or questions of, or someone that can give you tips and directions along the way of your career path, both before you're certified and after you're certified. Again, a lot of people I've heard come back and say, well, you know, I went to this particular meeting and someone came up to me and said, thank you for mentoring me. And they said, I didn't even realize that I was doing it. uh, that is a great advantage of this career path and this career is that everyone is so helpful and encouraging. So when you start working, if you've never worked in this industry before, then you're kind of going in blind. Now, your employer will give what they expect from you. However, there's a lot of details that we can impart having worked 30 plus years in this industry that will ease that path for you. And feel free to ask questions along the way. I'll keep my eye on the corner conversation as we go. With time management, uh, there is an easy way and a hard way to do it, I guess. And it depends what your personality type is. Some people are, you've heard of type A personality people, and they're just driven, driven, driven. And then you have other people that they are goal orientated, but they get distracted along the way. And sometimes you are an in between morph of both of those. What you've learned from other careers and your personality type and how you work will assist you in developing your time management goals in this career. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to just kind of do a staccato of steps along the way of what a day looks like. And uh, what you need to know is that when you have a start of your day, make it consistent. If you're working remote, it's not always easy to have a consistent start time. But if you are working for a company that has a clock in and clock out, then again, you can say, well, I work from 7 to 3:30, or I work from 8 to 4. And that time is dedicated time during your work week. Always start your day on time. If you're going to start at 8 o'clock in the morning, then be at your desk logging in at 8 o'clock in the morning. And you have to be a little careful, though, if you are logging in remote, because sometimes your employer, you don't want to be logging in, 15, 20 minutes ahead of time, as that could bump you into overtime. So see what the criteria is for logging in and logging out. If you work at a physical location, then it's real easy, right? You get there ahead of time, you log in, then you walk into your office. Uh, when I log in, the first thing I do is check my messages. Now, often you have email messages that come in through who you work through, your employer, but you can also have things like team messages, or instant messages, whatever platform that you use. And you want to go over those first thing before you get into your next step of working charts, or whatever your role requires you to do. I also do not answer all of my emails right away. I look at them and see which ones take precedence, which one so that I can answer quickly and might change the activities that I have for that day, or ones that I can put off when I check messages later in the day. And we'll talk about checking messages here in just a few minutes. Then I also confirm my calendar for the day. Was any meetings canceled? Did I get any new meetings set up? And again, you might not have regularly scheduled meetings, and maybe you do. There are one of the places that I do work for, they have huddles every week. And so they have designated times where they get together and they communicate about specifics in that job. So, what you are going to do is confirm that your calendar is clear and that you can work through whatever agenda that you have prepared for that day. Then you start your production work or project work, depending on what your role is. A lot of people, when they start out, they're doing production coding. And so you open up your platforms. You probably have multiple monitors, at least two, and get comfortable for the day. Start working. Now, one of the things that I've learned from working for long periods of time in a role that I really, really enjoy is that I don't often take breaks. I just keep going when you work remote. And that's not necessarily very healthy. Um, I know my mother sat in my chair the other day when I left, and she sat in my office for a while. And the next day, she told me, she said, "Your chair is not comfortable." And she said, "How do you sit in that all day long?" Well, I personally thought it was comfortable. And so, again, uh, make sure that you designate times to take breaks, just like you would if you were working in-house in a specific office. This is really important because one thing is just plain blood circulation. uh, whether you're learning how to do your job, which makes you think intently and kind of zone in, or you love your job and you get in the zone and you don't want to be interrupted, then you're going to find that before you know it, the hours have flown by and you haven't even taken the time to say what we call as a bio break or a potty break. So it might be behoove you to put on your phone a specific time for the day to get up, walk around, if anything, bend over, touch your toes, go get a drink of water, put new ice in your cup, or whatever you need to do. Step outside, get some fresh air, come back. Most places that you work allow for, in an 8-hour work week, or 8-hour workday, they allow for a 30-minute lunch and two 15-minute breaks. And that is ideal, is to get up and walk around for 15 minutes, get some vitamin D outside if you're able to do that. Uh, Take your lunch away from your desk. Now, I don't know how many of you that are super guilty of this, but I often eat at my desk because I often don't take breaks, and that's not healthy. Uh, and so I wouldn't advise you to do that. Don't eat at your desk. First of all, it just makes your desk messy. Your fingers get sticky, and you need that break. It's good for your digestive tract to get up, move around. Whether you have to prepare your lunch or you've brought yourself a lunch, the I know that some hospital settings are a little different than they had been. Where the cafeterias aren't open, but they usually are at least open to employees. And so find a place to have your lunch away from everybody else. And then you want to also be very mindful of when you schedule meetings or when meetings are scheduled with you, that you keep them short and to the point. Now, uh, it's easy, especially for someone like me that's a talker, to get off track. So there's nothing wrong with being friendly and talking about a few personal things before you get started, but stay on track with the meetings and then always end on a positive note and wrap it up when you say you're going to end the meeting. So if it's going to be a 15-minute meeting and you start at 1 o'clock and you're supposed to end at 1:15, end at be wrapping it up or end it at 1:15 so that you're mindful of everybody's time. And this also encourages other people to schedule meetings with you and work with you because they know that you're making good use of your time. Another area that we often kind of overlook is how to wrap up our day. Because if you are going to say stop at 4 o'clock and at 3:30, you should be winding down. You should be starting to wrap up your production or what you're doing, wrap up the last chart that you're going to be working on. Don't try to get one more started or one more in there. Instead, plan that you need to go back, check your messages. It's always good to, again, look at tomorrow's agenda, see if there's something that you need to do, and be prepared to sign off or log out or clock out whenever you're supposed to. I have failed to do this a couple times and been just working away, and before I knew it, 30 minutes past the time I was supposed to clock out had gone by, and that's not beneficial to you or your employer, who has slotted their time for you to work and are paying you. Don't want to end up paying overtime if that builds up. I like to practice something that Laureen taught me a long time ago called inbox zero. We'll talk about this again in a little bit, but it has to do with your emails. So, if you are starting to wrap up your day, the last 30 minutes of the day, check your inbox and make sure it's at zero. Any emails that you can set aside that needs more time or that you need to address, you can send them a message and let them know that you'll get back with them tomorrow with more details. And again, planning is very important, and try to keep that inbox empty so that when you come in the morning that you're not looking at a bunch of congestion, but whatever specific for that day that came in. uh, I prepare for the next day and kind of plan ahead. Okay, I've got, 3 meetings tomorrow and I need to get X amount of work done as far as production is concerned. And so I'm going to do XYZ first and leave ABC till the end of my day tomorrow. You don't have to do a lot of planning, but just kind of look ahead and look at the week itself so that there's no surprises. And one another thing that I think we really overlook is clean your desk off before you leave. That last 5-10 minutes, throw any water bottles away. If there's any paper that needs to be taken off of your desk, don't leave paper, pencils out. I try to keep my desk looking the same every time that I walk away, so that when I come in the next morning, that it's pleasing to the eye. Now, I am a person that is very bad about clutter, and therefore, I try very, very hard to keep my office area as clean as possible, because there is something about clutter that is anxiety causing. So, whether it be a place to just stack up papers neatly, put your writing utensils in a specific area, maybe wipe, when you turn your computer off, wipe your keyboard off with a baby wipe, and or a hand sanitizer wipe, and your desk surface area. Keep it clean, and as organized as possible, and then you'll feel refreshed when you come in the next day. We have to talk about office space. Whether you work remote or you work in a office in a facility or an office building, if that's the case, you're probably working in a cubicle of some kind. Very seldom do coders get individual offices. There's just not enough budget for that. They usually either have you in one large room. If you work in a hospital setting, you probably work in a cubicle setting that's shown here. It's not tiny cubicles, but you have your own space to put up, pictures or personal items. But and you usually are always working with more than one screen, and that's very, very helpful. Usually, they don't go with white. I thought that was kind of funny, white doesn't stay clean very good. Now, this would be a dream office for remote, for home, but that is not reality. I don't know anybody that has an office that looks like that. That's what I wish my office looks like. And I have a very nice office right now, but that is not what it ends up looking like. So what does it usually look like? If you work remote and you're working from home, it's very important for time management to make sure that you have a dedicated area to work. Um, I I have experienced both of these scenarios while working remote. At one time, my office was for a couple of years. My office was in my bedroom. I wouldn't suggest that you do that, although I know that's very practical. But it means you just hardly ever leave that room. And so, try to have a dedicated space. That's the best thing you can do for time management. You also want to keep your interruptions as small as possible. And if you have children, that is and you work remote, it is almost impossible. My husband used to joke that he was going to get a placard to put on my office door that said, working, or stop sign, that I could nobody could come in that door. But people always did. There was always reasons to interrupt me, and many of us have special needs children, which is one of the reasons why it works so well to work remote and from home. But often my son would come and interrupt me during the day. Now I have a separate office in a different location, and that's great. However, you still uh, can be interrupted, even if you have a little box, out in the middle of nowhere. Somebody's going to interrupt you. So the reality is that have to make sure you have dedicated space and dedicated time set aside to work. Uh, a great advantage of working remote is that a lot of production jobs don't care what time you work. As long as you put in your 8 hours, they don't care if you work all through the night or you work during the day. Sometimes they don't care if you work during the weekend. So, whatever works best for you is ideal, as long as you get your protection time and hours in. And the better you are at your job, the more, um, leeway you have in picking your hours most of the time for production jobs. Going back to emails, I mentioned that we were going to talk about them again. For time management, you need to really not dwell on your emails. Often when people send you emails, work emails even, they don't expect a response back immediately. So if you have, say, a tone on your computer whenever an email comes through, I would get rid of that. You almost every system has a little envelope icon that comes up to let you know that messages are in. And, if it is something, if you work for a big enough organization, most of them have instant messaging of some type within their platform. And if someone needs to get a hold of you and needs a response right away, they can send you an instant message. Uh, so again, set aside time to check your emails. I try to check mine always in the morning and first thing, and one of the last things I do before I leave for the day. Some people check their emails 3 times a day, which would again be great. Come back from lunch, check your emails before you start working again, and then uh, you. I would set dedicated times 3 times a day. If you don't do that, what tends to happen is that you get distracted. At least I do. Lorene used to say she suffers from SOS, shiny object syndrome. I definitely suffer from this. The slightest little distraction has my brain going off in another direction. And I'm always excited about new projects that cross my path. And I don't need to be thinking about those when my time needs to be dedicated with what I'm scheduled to do that day. So, again, set times to check your messages and your emails and don't let them distract you. And practice that inbox zero. Try to handle all emails that you possibly can handle by the end of the day. Have the inbox empty and don't leave messages that you've already answered, depending on whether you use Outlook or Gmail or whatever. Archive those, get rid of those messages so that you don't have 30 messages sitting there that have already been responded to that are still showing up in your inbox. Find out how that platform works, and again, just make sure it's cleared out and fresh for you on the next day. Another tip is know what your production rate is. It's important for you. You may be new to production coding or a new coder, uh, and the production rates change a little bit within the industry depending on, who you work for, what job you have. So there is no hard set number or range. So I gave a pretty significant range for these, and I will explain them. But it's one of the best things that you can do for yourself in time management is to understand what's expected of you when you go into a position. Now, if you're doing production coding, again, not all jobs are alike, and you may be tasked with something different than maybe some of your coworkers are. So clarify with your supervisor or your lead or your director, what is my production? And again, they don't expect you to be perfect right away, especially when you're taking on a new task. But it's important that you have that understanding and that communication so that you know what's expected of you. Sometimes they don't even know, you know, and that's it. That can happen. But for time management, you can't manage your time and your production rate if you don't know what's expected. And don't try to rush your work just to meet a production rate and then skimp on the quality. So quality, quantity, be careful with that. Again, not all jobs are alike, but as a general rule goes, when you deal with inpatient coders, they can do anywhere from 5 to 8. um, a day. Now, that may seem kind of low, and that actually is probably high. I don't know too many that can do 8 in a day, depending on what they're seeing that day. But you have to remember that inpatient encounters are never usually one day, they're usually multiple days. And a lot of events and things are happening, procedures, consults, and stuff. And the coder has to reference all of that. There's a lot more money involved as well, so they're dealing with more than one code set. They're also dealing with multiple providers, multi specialties, and uh, the financial people are uh, setting protocols and criteria of things that have to be met uh, because you are dealing with so much money. So, again, 5 to 8 is a low and high range. This is not the same for people doing, say, ER coding or radiology coding. Uh, I would consider those outpatient uh, uh, type events. Now, verbiage can be different too. I call them, I would say for outpatient is an encounter. Sometimes I've called them events, seeing the doctor, but that's not probably the best way to use that verbiage. So encounters for outpatient, it's probably 25 to 30 a day. Um, and you can divide that by like 7 hours or 6 hours for what's average. Uh, if you're new, nobody expects you to be able to do 30 in a day. Uh, uh, but the ideal thing is that every week um, you improve, you get better. And when we talk about outpatient, I'm talking across the board, all specialties. So certain specialties will take longer than other specialties because they have more disease processes that they see. So you can probably do more than 30 in a day if you're dealing with one specialty, say podiatry. And because there's only a few procedures that they perform in office, and the diagnoses are relatively common and often the same repeatedly, versus if you're dealing, say, with interventional radiology or another specialty that, say, even wound care, things like that, they're going to be, or primary care. This is a good range probably for primary care. You never know what's going to cross your desk when you're doing primary care because you can also have all ages coming across your desk. Risk adjustment is usually 4 to 6 an hour. It also depends if you work for an MA plan or if you're working for a hospital system or clinics. Again, MA plans, you can do a lot of them. It's even easier now that they're required to be electronic. All the medical records are electronic. We used to have to read handwritten ones, and that really would throw your time management out the window. You could pull a patient that had 30 pages of documentation, and or a patient that had over 600 or 1,000 pages, and sometimes they were easier to do than the 30 because of handwritten notes or what you can abstract from and what you can't. So if you had 1,000 pages, a lot of that's hospital stays, and most of that stuff you can't capture HCCs from, so you didn't have to look at it anyway. So again, 4 to 6 an hour is ideal. If you're doing complete capture and you're going back 18 months, it might slow down. And it also depends, like I said, whether you're working for an MA plan versus, uh, which would be an insurance um, payer, uh, or you're working for a doctor's office, or you're working for a hospital system doing risk adjustment. Auditors, 2 to 4 an hour. Usually, their auditors are. Um, they're usually doing a lot of CDI work, and they have to do a lot of research within the patient encounter and out look at outside notes and things. Depending on what platform they use, let's say for Epic, they may have to go in and reference imaging and labs and uh, medical records that have been brought in from other entities. And like I said, researching to see if the documentation meets highest specificity, et cetera, et cetera. And they a lot of times are going back 18 months or so to verify diagnoses that nothing's changed. So this is kind of oh uh, a rough estimate. And again, it depends who you work for. Annette said, "Holy cow, my management thinks I need to do 90 outpatient E&M mental health encounters. Where did you get your numbers?" Again, it's very specific as to what you're looking at. Now, again, mental health, how many diagnoses, and you're doing only E&M, you're not doing any procedures, so you could definitely do those at a much faster rate than you could say prophy for a primary care provider. Yeah, that is doing annual wellness visits as well as, maybe having pediatric visits coming through and so on and so forth. So again, this is a rough estimate, um, and maybe a launching point as to an average. So yeah, yeah. Annette, uh, uh, Jane said, "Wow, Annette, they want me to do 70 outpatient a day, but documentation is not good. But other hospitals worked, we did 100 a day, but documentation was great." Right. And again, um, sometimes the production changes, but it's based on what people have been able to do. So Ashley says her job wants 152 a day E&M pro fee for primary care for one. Wow, that's really high, Ashley. That is that I've never heard of 152. I may need to talk to you and see what kind of who you work for and what they're doing. So that's really interesting for primary care. Uh, and maybe it's one doctor. Yeah, yeah, and yeah, she says it's tough. So now, caveat to that, guys, if some of you are new and to coding, you're thinking, "Oh my gosh, I can't even get through, a test within a specific amount of time." Don't worry about it. We're not talking about this. Ashley obviously is knows these doctors and is some of this stuff she can probably do in her sleep because she dreams about it because that's all she looks at. But again, a lot of it becomes very repetitious in some scenarios. If you're doing an annual wellness visit and it's da, 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 what's coming. Uh, Jane said, Annette, also our encoder works pretty good, but sometimes it gets bogged down. Well, Jane, that also matters. You, um, I don't. I do use an encoder, but I use FinaCode. I don't use the encoder that's provided for me where I do some production work because I don't like it as much. But uh, again, you're looking at repetitive codes that you probably have cheat sheets on and can get through them pretty quickly. However, if you have to do CDI work along the way, where who was it that Annette said, if your documentation's no good, then that really bogs you down. And where provider education comes into play, sometimes the provider is picking the codes now with the EMRs, and then the coders are coming back and just cleaning up the mess is the way I like to think of it. And that makes a difference. But moving on, some helpful tips. The first uh, thing regarding um, when you get to your all everything else is in place. You set up your timeline of what you're going to do for a day, and you know when you're going to take a break, etc. Don't get distracted. uh, I First of all, it would be ideal if you didn't even keep your phone next to you. Now, for me, I have to keep my phone by me because I have other things that I have to see, and but I keep it on vibrate so I can hear it vibrate. And I also, when I don't have it on vibrate, I have specific tones designated for, whether it's a text from somebody in the family or it is uh, someone that I've been working with or whatever. I know what all of that means. And so I don't have to pick the phone up and look at it. Or I know, hey, I can, when I go take my lunch, I'll sit down and eat and look at, what's going on. But don't let yourself get distracted. Uh, that is typical. What you see with the lady with the phone, very, very typical. And for me, the lady down here with her elbow, or I mean her chin on her hand. Oh my word. Um, yeah, I end up my brain just goes off in another, and I can look at something and be staring at it for a few minutes. So I have to be very careful and mindful of that. Remember, you have commitment to your employer or your contractor, and you don't want to waste their time, and you don't want to waste your time either. Find out as you're working what your problem areas are, what distracts you, like your phone. If it's going to be problematic, find another place for it, or do what I do, where you signify different tones mean different things, or set it on vibrate. Let people know that, hey, I don't look at my phone at work. I can't look at my phone at work. So if it's an emergency, then you need to contact somebody else, or figure out we have to come up with a plan to contact me. Otherwise, again, I check my phone 3 times a day when I take breaks. And then find out what's distracting you. If you have a big giant window next to your desk, and you find yourself looking out the window when cars go by, and you get distracted, put a curtain up. If people come to your door and bother you, lock your door. uh, Keep your desk um, free of things. I am a fiddler, so I have to have things that I um, have in my hand. Like right now, I'm fiddling with a hair clip. So and that keeps my brain steady. However, if it would be a problem, like you have a book you want to read, or um, you have things on your desk that distract you, just put them away. Identify what the problem is and correct it. Wrapping up, guys, and I know some of you have shared some tips, and that's fabulous. Thank you for doing that. Um, uh, don't take your work home with you, which is really hard when you work remote from home. Instead, walk away. You have to allow yourself that freedom. Time management is very, very important, but you don't do yourself or anybody else any good when you dwell on your work after you walk away. Now, you may think, well, I'm very committed and dedicated to my job. I love what I do. Absolutely, that I do. I love what I do. However, you can't let your job be your escape from life. And if you don't allow your brain and your body to regenerate and take a break and walk away in the evenings, then you're doing yourself and your employer a disservice. Um, that leads into the best way for time management, to manage your time, is to make sure that you stay healthy. Uh, I mean, if you have to spend half the day blowing your nose or running to the bathroom, that's not doing anybody any good. And there's simple things that you can do to take care of yourself, especially knowing that our job is a very sedentary job. I know some people have alarms on their phones to tell them, get up and take a break, get up and walk around, go get a drink of water, make sure that you always have something to drink there by you so that you're refreshed. Uh, 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 if since we have a sedentary job, have exercises that you do for yourself. Just walk around the block, whatever works for you, or just sit outside and enjoy the sun. Get some vitamin D when you get home, or I like to actually pull weeds once in a while. But one thing that I do for myself is I walk away from work on the weekends, and I don't think about or answer any emails or my phone on the weekends. And not everybody could do that. I didn't used to do that, but I found that it gave me a better work life balance. And when I came back to work, even if that's in the evenings, I'm refreshed, ready to go, and able to handle that time management, especially when somebody throws something at me that needs to be done quickly. My brain is fresh and I can handle it. I'm not bogged down worrying about all kinds of other things happening in my life because I managed them on the weekends, and I uh, am keeping my little gray cells open and free. So I noticed we're still getting some questions or great comments, and I appreciate that. Uh, Jane went on to say, "Yeah, be healthy." She uses Microsoft Outlook reminder of tasks to pop up. That's a good idea, and you could probably do that to do breaks. Oh, and desk exercises, absolutely brilliant. Your employer will also probably have built into their HR system, depending on how big of an employer you have, uh, helpful, happy, helpful, uh, healthy tips, because they want you to stay healthy as well. So if your employer has things in a program already for you, you might check in and see what they have. That could be discounts to the local gym, uh, or I know one that used to have prizes for people that did certain things to be healthy, and you could get movie tickets or, I know it wasn't necessarily, coupons for ice cream cones, go out with your family or go bowling or something like that. There was all kinds of these great coupons that you could use locally. And I encourage you to do that, to stay healthy, walk away from work for the best time management while you're working, and share your tips with everybody along the way. You may be a mentor and not even know it. Ask what works best for other people that have been working in the industry longer than you, and uh, take advantage of all that knowledge that's out there. Share things that work for you as well. All right. Thank you guys. I appreciate it. Jane and everybody else. Obviously, Jane just made a few more comments. So I hope this is beneficial, and we'll see you next time. Happy learning.
Do you need more medical certification and business training? Learn more at www.cco.us.